Some context. I moved out of my hometown 5 years ago to get away from my family's BS. My dad runs this commercial real estate business that's been in the family for 3 generations. Since I was like 16, the expectation was always that I'd join the business after college. Every conversation, every holiday, every fucking birthday card had some reminder about my future in the company. But here's the thing. I saw how my dad treated people, the way he'd squeeze every penny from clients, the shady accounting, how he'd manipulate family members into doing free work. My sister Naomi basically worships the ground he walks on, and my mom enables everything he does. I decided I wanted nothing to do with it. When I told them I was moving to Seattle for a tech job instead of joining the family business, my dad literally threw his drink across the room. Actual glass shattered on the wall behind me. He started screaming about how I was betraying the family legacy. My mom just sat there crying, and Naomi kept saying I was being selfish. Since then, our relationship has been complicated. By complicated, I mean they only contact me when they want something. Always money, always with some bullshit excuse. It started in college when my dad borrowed my credit card for emergency business expenses and racked up $5K that took me years to pay off. Then there was the time they asked me to co-sign for Naomi's car because her credit wasn't established yet. Guess who ended up making 8 months of payments when she decided she couldn't afford it right now? Then the loan they needed when one of their properties had plumbing issues. I'm still waiting to see that $12K again. Every time I tried to bring up repayment, I'd get guilt-tripped. We raised you. Or, this is what family does. Or my personal favorite, the business will be yours someday, so you're really just investing in yourself. Yeah, the business I repeatedly said I wanted no part of. I finally hit my breaking point last Christmas when my dad borrowed my credit card again to buy my mom jewelry. I confronted him. We had a massive blowout, and I haven't heard from any of them in over 7 months. Until yesterday. My phone rings. It's Dad. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. No hello, no how are you? He jumped straight into how they've planned this amazing birthday celebration for Naomi, turning 25 next month. The centerpiece? A fucking helicopter tour of the city that cost $2,200. He says they already put down a deposit, but the final payment is due tomorrow, and their business account is tied up in a transaction. He needs me to send the money today, and they'll pay me back next week. I laugh, like actually laugh in his face. I ask if he's seriously calling me after 7 months of silence to ask for more money when he hasn't paid back a single cent of what he already owes me. He gets all huffy and says this isn't about the past. It's about being there for Naomi. That family sticks together. That they've already told her about the helicopter surprise and can't disappoint her now. I tell him no. Simple as that. That's when he loses it. Starts yelling that I've become selfish and cold. That Seattle changed me. That I forgot where I came from. Then he drops the ultimatum. We already paid the deposit. You better send the $2,200 today or you're dead to us. Something inside me just snapped. I got really quiet and said, "Funny, you've been dead to me for years. I've just been too much of a coward to admit it." He started sputtering, but I kept going. Told him I've calculated exactly how much they've borrowed from me over the years. $73,455. I've documented every penny with dates, reasons, and broken promises. Told him I've been working with a lawyer for months now, that I knew this day would come, when they'd reach out not to reconnect, not to apologize, but to take more. He goes completely silent, then tries to backpedal hard. Suddenly he's asking about my job, my apartment, if I'm dating anyone. Classic manipulation switch. I cut him off and tell him the conversation is over. Before hanging up, I say, "By the way, check your email in about an hour. You might want to have your lawyer on standby." Then I hung up. My hands were literally shaking. For years, I've let them walk all over me because family, but I've been quietly building leverage. See, what my dad doesn't know is that my grandmother, his mom, secretly left me minority ownership stakes in 3 of the family properties before she died. Not enough to control anything, but enough to request financial audits. Enough to cause problems if I wanted to. I'd never use this leverage because I kept hoping they'd change. That they'd see me as more than an ATM. That maybe someday we could have a real relationship. Yesterday proved that's never going to happen. So I pulled the trigger. Sent formal requests for full financial audits of all 3 properties through my lawyer. Sent a detailed invoice for every loan with 8% interest compounded annually. And the kicker, filed notices with their business partners about potential financial irregularities I've observed over the years. All perfectly legal, all within my rights as a minority stakeholder. This morning, my phone exploded. Missed calls from my dad, mom, sister, uncle, even my dad's business partner. Voicemails ranging from rage to tears. Texts getting increasingly desperate. What the hell did you do? Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Naomi's birthday is ruined. We're having an emergency meeting with the partners tomorrow. Please undo this filing immediately. We can work this out as a family. The last text from my dad just came through. We're begging you. Please stop this. Tell us what you want. What I want? I want 5 years of my life back. I want the $73K they stole from me. I want them to feel what it's like to be used and discarded. But mostly, I want them to realize that their actions have consequences, that I'm not their personal piggy bank anymore, and this is just the beginning. Update 1. So it's been 3 days since I dropped the nuclear option on my family, and things have escalated in ways I didn't even anticipate. My phone is basically unusable at this point from all the calls and texts. I've had to mute most of my family members just to get some peace. Before I get into what's happening now, a lot of you asked for more background on the financial abuse. So here's the greatest hits of how my family has fucked me over. Freshman year of college, 2012, Dad convinced me to add him as an authorized user on my first credit card in case of emergencies and to help build my credit. Within 2 months, he maxed it out buying business lunches, gas, and random shit. When I confronted him, he said the business was having temporary cash flow issues and he'd pay it back next quarter. He never did. I ended up working double shifts at the campus cafeteria to make minimum payments. 2016, Dad calls me panicking because they need $8K for emergency repairs on one of their properties. A pipe burst and flooded the basement of a commercial building. Their business account was tied up, and insurance would take too long. I was 23, just started my first real job, and had saved up for a down payment on a car. I transferred the money same day. When I asked about repayment 3 months later, he acted confused, like we never discussed a timeline, said I should consider it investing in the family business. 2018, Naomi needed a car. Her credit was too new, so they asked me to co-sign. I stupidly agreed. 6 months later, Naomi calls saying she can't afford the payments because she wants to go on some trip to Europe with her friends. I'm now on the hook for 8 months of payments or my credit gets trashed. When I asked my parents to step in, they said Naomi deserves to enjoy her youth, and I should help out my little sister. 2020. Dad somehow got hold of my credit card info again and charged $5K for my mom's birthday present, a fancy watch she always wanted. When I discovered the charges and confronted him, he acted surprised, said he thought he was using the business card, and it was an honest mistake. But he couldn't return the watch because Mom already fell in love with it. Promised to pay me back in installments. Never saw a dime. I could list a dozen more examples, but you get the pattern. Take. Empty promises, guilt trips, the works. Now, about my grandmother and how I got leverage. My grandmother, Dad's mom, was the only person in the family who saw through my dad's bullshit. She built the real estate business with my grandfather in the 70s and watched my dad slowly turn it from a respected local business into his personal ATM. Before she died in 2019, she secretly updated her will. She called me over for tea one afternoon when I was visiting home, told me she was giving me minority stakes in 3 key properties: the office building downtown, the strip mall on Westlake, and this big storage facility that generates most of their passive income. She made me promise not to tell anyone until after she passed. When she died, the lawyer handling her estate quietly transferred the ownership stakes to me. Dad was pissed when he found out, but legally couldn't do anything about it. He kept trying to get me to sign them back to the family for years. Now he knows why I never did. So what's happened in the last 3 days? Absolute chaos. First, my lawyer confirmed that all 3 audit requests were properly filed. The court approved them yesterday morning, which means my dad now has 30 days to provide complete financial records for all 3 properties going back 5 years. All the rental income, all the expenses, all the business lunches and travel expenses he's been writing off. Everything. Dad called me 17 times in a row on Tuesday. I finally picked up and he was screaming. I could barely understand him. Something about how I was destroying everything they built. How could I do this to my own family? Did I have any idea what this would do to their reputation in the community? I just listened. Didn't say a word, which made him even more furious. Then he switched tactics, tried to appeal to my sense of family, said Mom hasn't left her bedroom since she found out, that she's been crying nonstop, that Naomi had to cancel her birthday party because she's too embarrassed to face her friends now that rumors are spreading about financial problems at the family business. I asked him point blank, are you more upset about potentially being exposed for financial mismanagement or about the fact that you owe me over $73K? He hung up. My uncle, Dad's brother, texted me yesterday. He's always been the peacemaker in the family, said he understands why I'm upset, but asked if we could handle this internally without involving the courts and business partners. I told him this has been building for a decade, and if Dad had ever once acknowledged the debt or made any effort to pay me back, maybe things would be different. The most interesting development? Two of Dad's business partners reached out separately. Turns out they've had suspicions about the company finances for years, but never had enough leverage to demand a proper audit. Now they're using my filings to push for a complete review of all company holdings, not just the 3 properties I have stakes in. One of them, this guy Brian, who's known me since I was a kid, called me directly. He was surprisingly cool about everything, said my audit requests were actually doing them a favor. They've wanted to look at the books for years, but Dad always stonewalled them. He asked if I'd consider joining a conference call with all the partners next week. I agreed. That call is scheduled for Monday. Meanwhile, Naomi has gone from angry texts to full-on emotional manipulation. First, she sent me this long paragraph about how I'm ruining the most important birthday of her life, and how she'll never forgive me for this. When I didn't respond, she switched to this fake concerned sister act, asking if I'm having mental health issues, if I need to talk to someone, suggesting maybe I'm having a breakdown. I finally texted her back with just the list of dates and amounts of money they've taken from me over the years. Her response? That was different. We're family. The cherry on top came this morning. Dad's assistant, who I've always been friendly with, sent me a heads up that Dad called an emergency meeting with their accountant yesterday. Apparently, there's serious concern about what a full audit might uncover. Not just the money he owes me, but potentially years of questionable accounting practices. Mom finally called me directly last night. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Kept saying she didn't know about most of this, that Dad handled all the finances, that she never meant to hurt me. I almost felt bad for her until she said, if you drop the audit request right now, we'll pay for your sister's helicopter tour ourselves. Like, seriously? That's your offer? After everything, you're still fixated on that fucking helicopter ride? I told her I'd consider dropping everything if they repay the full $73K plus interest, sign a legally binding agreement acknowledging the debt, and setting up a payment plan. Remove me as guarantor co-signer from any and all loans or credit accounts. Issue a formal apology to me in front of the entire extended family. She went quiet, then said she'd talk to Dad about it. Haven't heard back? The real bombshell came this afternoon. My lawyer called to let me know that while reviewing the property documents, she discovered something interesting. Apparently, I'm listed as a personal guarantor on 2 major business loans my dad took out in 2017. Loans I never signed for. Loans that could make me personally liable if the business defaulted. So not only have they been stealing from me for years, they've potentially put me on the hook for hundreds of thousands in business debt I never agreed to. Tomorrow, my lawyer is filing for an emergency injunction to have my name removed from those loan documents. And Monday, I'm joining that call with the business partners. Dad's last text to me tonight. You have no idea what you've started. Your mother can't even look at me. Your sister is talking about moving away. Everything is falling apart. Please, please tell us what we need to do to make this stop. What they need to do. They need to realize I'm not their doormat anymore. I'm not backing down. Not until I get everything I'm owed. Both the money and the respect. More updates after the partner call on Monday. Update 2. So much has happened in the last week that I've been putting off this update just trying to process everything. Thanks for all the comments and DMs. Shit has gone from bad to catastrophic for my family. And TBH, I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of the revelations that have come out. So that Monday call with the business partners? It happened, but not at all how I expected. I logged onto Zoom at the scheduled time, coffee in hand, notes ready. But instead of the professional discussion I was expecting, I joined to find absolute chaos. Brian, Dad's longest-standing partner, was already screaming at my dad. 2 other partners and their legal counsel were there looking grim AF. My dad was red-faced and defensive. Turns out, my audit requests were just the tip of the iceberg. Once the partners started digging, they found way more concerning issues. Dad had apparently been reallocating, stealing funds from their joint ventures for years, using company cards for personal expenses, taking out loans against properties without proper authorization. The works. When they noticed I'd joined the call, everyone went quiet for a second. Then Brian actually thanked me. Said my audit requests finally gave them the leverage they needed to look at records they'd been asking to see for months. Dad tried to play it off, saying this was all a family disagreement that had gotten out of hand, that I was just trying to get back at him for typical father-son stuff. One of the other partners straight up laughed in his face. Said this wasn't about family drama, this was about financial misconduct that affected all of them. That's when my dad did something I never expected. He tried to throw me under the bus, started saying I had access to the accounts too, that I'd helped with the books during college breaks, implying I was somehow involved in whatever shady shit he'd been doing. I calmly reminded everyone that I'd moved away 5 years ago, specifically because I didn't want to be part of the family business, that I had documentation showing I'd repeatedly refused roles in the company, and that, ironically, the only connection I still had was the minority stakes my grandmother left me, the very thing that enabled these audits. One of the partners asked why I hadn't brought up concerns earlier if I suspected financial misconduct. I was blunt, told them about the $73K my family had taken from me over the years, how I'd been manipulated and guilt-tripped, how I'd finally had enough when my dad called demanding more money for a helicopter tour after 7 months of silence. Brian asked for a copy of my loan documentation, said if my claims were accurate, they wanted to include this in their broader investigation. I agreed to forward everything to their legal team. Dad was seething by the end of the call. As soon as the partners hung up, he went ballistic, started threatening to sue me for defamation, to disown me completely, to make sure I never saw a penny from any family assets. I just let him rant until he ran out of steam, then calmly reminded him that I had everything documented, that threats would only make his position worse. Then I ended the call. That was Monday. Tuesday morning, my phone blows up with texts from relatives I haven't spoken to in years. Apparently, Dad went on some kind of family-wide smear campaign, telling everyone I'm trying to destroy the business out of spite. The family is basically splitting into factions now. My mom's sister called to tell me she's disappointed in me for attacking family. My dad's younger brother, the one who previously tried to play peacemaker, now says I'm taking things too far. But interestingly, two of my cousins and my uncle Paul, mom's brother, reached out separately to say they've had similar experiences with my dad's financial bullshit over the years. Uncle Paul was especially validating. Said he loaned my dad $40K for a property renovation in 2015 that was never repaid. That he's been watching my dad manipulate family members for decades. He actually apologized for not speaking up sooner, for not warning me when I was younger. Wednesday was when things got really messy. My sister Naomi showed up at my apartment unannounced. I live in Seattle. She lives in our hometown, 4 hours away. Just drove up without warning, pounding on my door at 8 a.m. When I opened up, still in my pajamas, half asleep, she pushed past me into my apartment, already in tears. Started this whole dramatic monologue about how I'd ruined everything and destroyed the family. Said her friends were all asking questions about why her party was canceled, that rumors were spreading around town about the family business having financial problems. I asked her straight up if she knew about Dad using my credit cards, about the loans I'd never been repaid. She brushed it off, said everyone in the family helps each other out, and I was being selfish for expecting repayment. That Dad had given me everything growing up, and this was how I repaid him. I laughed and asked if she knew how many extra jobs I worked in college because Dad kept draining my accounts. If she realized I delayed buying my first car by 2 years because of the money they took. If she had any idea what it was like to be used as the family ATM. That's when she dropped a bombshell. The helicopter tour? The $2,200 Dad was demanding? It was never real. There was no deposit, no booking. The whole thing was a test to see if I'd still support the family after our Christmas fight. Dad had told everyone I'd gone off the deep end and cut contact, and they wanted to see if I could be brought back into line. I was fucking stunned. They manufactured this whole crisis as a loyalty test? After stealing $73K from me over the years, they wanted to see if they could get another $2,200 just to prove they still had control over me. I told Naomi she needed to leave. She refused. Said we needed to fix this as a family. I picked up my phone and told her I'd call building security if she didn't leave voluntarily. She called me an asshole, slammed my door hard enough to make the pictures on my wall shake, and left. Thursday, got a call from my lawyer. The emergency injunction about removing my name from those business loans, approved by the judge. But here's the kicker. When the bank was notified, they flagged several irregularities with the loan documents. Apparently, my signatures were forged on multiple pages. The bank is now conducting their own investigation. Friday, the family business's main lender has put a freeze on their line of credit pending the outcome of the audits. Dad's office manager, who I'm still friendly with, texted me that they're having trouble making payroll and Dad had to take out a personal loan to cover this month's expenses. Saturday, yesterday, my mom showed up, also unannounced. Also drove 4 hours to get here, But unlike Naomi, she was calm, subdued even. Asked if we could talk at the coffee shop down the street instead of my apartment. I agreed, mostly because I was curious what new angle they were trying. At the coffee shop, Mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. Hair unwashed, wearing the same pearl necklace she's had since I was a kid, the one she only wears when she's stressed. She didn't yell or accuse. Instead, she asked questions. Actually listened for once. Asked when the financial exploitation started. Seemed genuinely shocked when I told her about some of the earliest incidents from college. Said Dad had always told her I was contributing voluntarily to family expenses because I believed in the business. I showed her my documentation, the spreadsheet, with dates, amounts, stated reasons, and broken promises. Her hands were shaking as she scrolled through it on my phone. Then she asked the question that floored me. Has he always been like this? Have I been blind this whole time? For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost believed she really didn't know. Then she slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a handwritten note from my dad saying this was the first installment of repaying what they owed, and asking me to call off the audits while they sorted things out internally. And just like that, any sympathy I had evaporated. This wasn't about understanding or reconciliation. This was another manipulation tactic, a down payment to make the problem go away. I slid the envelope back to her, told her the amount they owe is $73,455 plus 8% interest compounded annually as documented in my formal demand letter. That partial payment with strings attached wasn't acceptable, that the audits would continue as planned. She started crying, not the loud dramatic sobs like when she called before, but quiet, defeated tears. Said things at home were falling apart, that Dad was talking about selling one of the properties to get liquid, quickly, that Naomi was threatening to move out of state because she couldn't handle the humiliation, that their friends were starting to ask questions about why certain renovations on the properties had suddenly stopped. As she was leaving, she said something that's been echoing in my head. He always said you were the weak one, the sensitive one, the one who'd never succeed without the family business. I think he was afraid of you all along. This morning, I woke up to an email from my dad's main lender. They want to meet with me tomorrow to discuss the irregularities they found in the loan documents with my forged signatures. Separately, I got a text from Brian saying the partners are considering removing my dad from day-to-day operations pending a complete audit. It's all happening faster than I expected. I didn't set out to destroy the family business. I just wanted what was rightfully mine, my money back and to be free from their financial exploitation. But now that the dominoes are falling, I'm not going to stop them. Tomorrow's meeting with the lender might be the final nail in the coffin. We'll update again after. Final update. So it's been just over 2 weeks since this whole shitstorm started. I want to thank everyone for the support and advice. This community has honestly been more supportive than my actual family ever was. Let me pick up where I left off. I had that meeting with the lender on Monday. It was illuminating. The bank sent 2 representatives and their internal fraud specialist to my apartment. They offered to come to me, which was already a sign they were taking this seriously. They brought copies of loan documents with my signatures on them, asking me to confirm these weren't mine. It took about 3 seconds to see these were obvious forgeries. My actual signature is pretty distinctive. I loop my J in a specific way that my dad has never been able to copyright. These signatures were clearly his attempts, and not even good ones. The fraud specialist asked if I wanted to press charges. That hit me harder than I expected. Did I want my own father facing potential fraud charges? As much as he's hurt me financially, that felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready for. I told them I needed to think about it. They said they understood, but regardless of my decision, they were moving forward with their own investigation into the business loans. The main loan officer mentioned that based on what they'd found, they were considering calling in all outstanding loans to my dad's company immediately. That would effectively force them to liquidate assets to cover the debt. Tuesday was quiet. Too quiet. No calls or texts from family. I almost got worried, which is stupid considering I was the one who set all this in motion. Wednesday morning, 6:47 a.m. Pounding on my apartment door wakes me up. I check my security camera app installed after Naomi's surprise visit and see my dad standing there, looking like absolute shit. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. For a second, I considered not answering, but I've spent too many years avoiding confrontation with him. I put on a sweatshirt, took a deep breath, and opened the door. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just looked defeated, asked if he could come in. I let him in, but left the door open, partly as an escape route, partly as a message that this wasn't going to be a long, cozy chat. He sat on my couch without being invited, looked around my apartment like he was seeing it for the first time. In reality, this was only his second visit since I moved to Seattle 5 years ago. The first time, he spent the entire visit criticizing my tiny place and asking when I was going to get a real job and move back home. What came next was the closest thing to honesty I've ever heard from him. He said the business was in serious trouble. The partners had voted to temporarily remove him from operations pending the audit results. The bank was threatening to call in loans worth over $2 million. Three major tenants in their properties were considering breaking their leases due to reputation concerns. My sister had indeed canceled her birthday party and was threatening to move to Portland to live with her college roommate. The whole family empire was collapsing, and he couldn't understand why I'd blow everything up over what he called a few loans between family members. That's when I lost it. I pulled out my laptop, opened the spreadsheet I've been maintaining for years, and turned it to face him. Every loan, every credit card charge, every broken promise, meticulously documented with dates and amounts. I told him this wasn't about a few loans. This was about a decade of systematic financial abuse, about him seeing me as nothing more than an ATM or a signature on documents, about him never treating me with basic respect, never valuing me beyond what I could contribute to his precious business. He got defensive, started saying I was exaggerating, that family helps family, that I was being selfish, the same old guilt trips. But there was a new desperation to it. I cut him off and asked the question I'd been wanting to ask for years. Why me? Why did he target me specifically for all these loans? Why not Naomi? Why not my cousins? And finally, the truth came out. He admitted he'd always resented me, said I reminded him too much of his father, my grandfather, who started the business. Said I had the same stubborn independence and holier-than-thou attitude, that when I was growing up he could tell I was judging him, judging how he ran the business compared to how my grandfather had. The kicker? He said he knew from when I was a teenager that I was too smart to control, that I might actually be capable of running the business better than him someday. And he couldn't stand that thought. So he tried to keep me financially dependent, tried to teach me my place by making me beg for money and repayment that never came. It was so fucking twisted, but it finally made sense. The helicopter tour test was just the latest in a lifelong pattern of trying to assert dominance over me. When he finished his confession, he switched tactics. Started saying we could fix this together, that he'd repay everything he owed me if I'd just call off the audits and tell the bank it was all a misunderstanding about the forged signatures. I laughed in his face, told him I wasn't interested in his damage control, that if he wanted to start making things right, he could pay back the full $73,455 plus the calculated interest, which came to just over $94,000 total. Sign legal documents removing me as guarantor from any business dealings. Formally acknowledge his financial abuse to the entire family. Give me full control of the 3 properties my grandmother left me. Stay the hell out of my life unless invited back in. He got up, paced around my living room, ran his hands through his hair, asked if I was seriously giving him an ultimatum. I told him that these weren't negotiations. These were the terms of his surrender if he wanted any chance of salvaging what was left of his business. That's when he snapped, flipped my coffee table over, sending my laptop crashing to the floor. Started yelling about ungrateful children and family loyalty. I've seen my dad angry plenty of times, but this was different, primal almost. He took a step toward me with his fists clenched. I stood my ground. Told him if he took one more step, I'd call the police and press charges for the forged loan documents, the assault, all of it. That I had everything documented and was prepared to let him face the full consequences of his actions. We stood there, frozen in a standoff, for what felt like forever. Then something changed in his eyes. The rage drained away, replaced by something I'd never seen before. Fear. Maybe even respect. He slowly righted my coffee table, muttered an apology about the laptop, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned and asked if I really hated him that much. I told him I didn't hate him. I just didn't need him anymore. And that was probably what bothered him the most. Thursday morning, I got a DocuSign request from my dad's lawyer, a formal acknowledgement of debt for the full $94,000. A payment plan starting with an immediate $30,000 transfer and the remainder in monthly installments over 2 years. A legal document removing me as guarantor from all business loans. And transfer paperwork giving me full control of the 3 properties my grandmother left me. I checked my bank account. The $30,000 was already there. Later that day, Naomi called. She was crying, but not the manipulative tears from before. She said Dad had called a family meeting and admitted to everything, to the forged signatures, to the unpaid loans, to deliberately trying to keep me financially dependent. She apologized for her part in it, for the helicopter tour lie, for showing up at my apartment unannounced. I didn't say I forgave her because, honestly, I'm not there yet. But I told her I appreciated the apology and would consider talking more when I was ready. Friday, Brian called to tell me the partners had decided to permanently remove my dad from operational control of the business. He'd remain a silent partner with reduced ownership stake, but would have no decision-making authority moving forward. They wanted to know if I'd be interested in selling my stakes in the 3 properties back to the partnership. I told them I'd consider offers, but wasn't in any rush to decide. Yesterday, I received a formal letter from the bank stating they would not be pressing charges regarding the forged signatures, but had implemented stringent new oversight measures for all accounts associated with the family business. So where does that leave things now? I got what I wanted, my money, or at least the start of it, my freedom from their financial entanglements, and control over the properties that are rightfully mine. My dad has lost operational control of his business, his reputation in the community, and any hold he thought he had over me. The family is fractured, with some taking my side, others still loyal to my dad, and many caught uncomfortably in the middle. My mom keeps texting asking when we can start rebuilding our relationship. I haven't responded yet. Might not for a long time. I don't feel as satisfied as I thought I would. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret any of it. They pushed me for years, took advantage of me, manipulated me, and finally pushed me too far with that helicopter tour bullshit. The consequences they're facing are entirely of their own making. But there's a hollowness to it too. The realization that I'll never have the kind of family I wanted, that my own father was actively trying to sabotage me because he was threatened by me. That's a mindfuck I'll probably be unpacking in therapy for years. For now, I'm focusing on myself, using some of that $30,000 to renovate my tiny apartment, meeting with financial advisors about the best way to manage my new property assets, building stronger connections with friends who actually respect me. I don't know if I'll ever speak to my dad again. Don't know if I'll ever fully trust my mom or sister. But for the first time in my adult life, I don't feel financial anxiety when I see their names on my phone. Don't feel that twist in my gut wondering what they want from me this time. And that freedom? Worth every bit of the chaos of the past 2 weeks.